What if I told you that for 30 years, a serial killer sat next to you in church, that he coached your children, that he enforced the very laws meant to protect you? This isn't fiction. This is the story of Dennis Rader, by day a pillar of his Kansas community, by night one of America's most calculating predators. 10 victims, 3 decades of terror, one man living the perfect lie. The perfect American family. Meet Dennis Rader. Park City, Kansas. Population 7,000. The kind of place where neighbors wave from their porches, where children ride bikes until dark, where evil was the last thing anyone expected to find. But evil doesn't always look like evil, does it? Picture your most trusted neighbor, the one who brings in your mail when you're away, the one who helps jumpstart your car on cold mornings. For the residents of Park City, that neighbor was Dennis Lynn Rader. Born March 9, 1945, Dennis grew up in what appeared to be a typical middle American household. His childhood showed early warning signs that, in hindsight, seem almost predictable. But here's the terrifying truth. Thousands of children exhibit similar behaviors and never become killers. So what makes one person cross that line while others don't? What transforms a troubled child into a methodical killer who can fool an entire community for 3 decades? The answer isn't simple, and that's what makes Dennis Rader so dangerous and so fascinating. Building the perfect cover. 1971. Dennis Rader, age 26, stands at the altar of a small Kansas church. Beside him, Paula Dietz, a young woman who believes she's found her perfect husband. She has no idea she's marrying a monster in training. But here's what's chilling. At this moment, Dennis Rader wasn't yet a killer. He was something potentially more dangerous. He was learning to be one. The newlyweds settle into suburban bliss. Dennis finds work as an assembler at Coleman Company. Paula begins building what she believes will be a lifetime of happiness. They have 2 children, Carrie in 1978, Brian in 1975. To every observer, they were living the American dream. Dennis was an involved father. He helped with homework. He coached Little League. He never missed a school play or parent-teacher conference. But while Dennis Rader was perfecting the role of devoted family man, he was also perfecting something else entirely. He was learning to hunt. Between 1971 and 1974, Dennis Rader wasn't just building a family, he was building an alibi. Every community involvement, every act of kindness, every moment of apparent normalcy was creating the perfect camouflage for what was coming next. Because on January 15, 1974, Dennis Rader's 3 years of preparation would culminate in an act so brutal, so calculated, that it would haunt Wichita for the next 30 years. But first, he had to choose his victims. The Otero family massacre. January 15, 1974, 6:00 a.m. The Otero family begins what they believe is just another ordinary Tuesday in Wichita, Kansas. Joseph Otero, age 38, kisses his wife Julie goodbye as he prepares for work. Julie, 34, gets their 4 children ready for school. 9-year-old Joseph Jr. and 11-year-old Josephine will stay home sick today. It's a decision that will cost them their lives. What the Otero family doesn't know is that for weeks, Dennis Rader has been watching them. He knows Joseph's work schedule. He knows when the older children leave for school. He knows that on this particular Tuesday, the house will be vulnerable. At approximately 7:30 a.m., Dennis Rader cuts the phone line to the Otero house and enters through the back door. He's carrying a gun, rope, and a knife. He's also carrying something else, a carefully rehearsed plan. What happened next wasn't a crime of passion. It wasn't a robbery gone wrong. It was a performance. Dennis Rader had spent months planning every detail of what he would later describe as his masterpiece. Rader gathered the family in the master bedroom. He told them he was a wanted man, that he needed their car and money to escape. He convinced them that if they cooperated, no one would be hurt. It was the first of many lies Dennis Rader would tell that day. What followed was 4 hours of systematic torture and murder. Rader didn't just kill the Otero family, he savored it. He photographed his victims. He rearranged their bodies. He masturbated at the scene. For most people, such brutality would be impossible to comprehend. But for Dennis Rader, it was exactly what he'd been fantasizing about for years. The Otero murders weren't his first thoughts of killing. They were simply his first opportunity to turn fantasy into reality. The investigation begins. When police arrived at the Otero house, they found a crime scene unlike anything they'd encountered. The methodical nature of the killings, the positioning of the bodies, the complete lack of forensic evidence, everything indicated they were dealing with someone who had planned this extensively. But here's what made the case so difficult. Dennis Rader had prepared for this moment for years. He'd studied police procedures. He'd read forensic textbooks. He understood exactly how to avoid leaving evidence. Detective Bernie Drowatsky, one of the first investigators on the scene, later described it as the most disturbing crime he'd ever witnessed, not just because of the brutality, but because of the calculation behind it. The Wichita Police Department launched the largest investigation in their history. They interviewed hundreds of suspects. They followed thousands of leads. They had no idea that their killer was already back home, having dinner with his family, helping his children with their homework. While police searched for a monster, Dennis Rader was tucking his own children into bed. The letters begin. October 1974, 9 months after the Otero murders, the Wichita Eagle newspaper receives a phone call from a man claiming to be the killer. The caller directs them to a book in the Wichita Public Library. Inside that book, they find a letter that would change everything. I write this letter to you for the sake of the taxpayers as well as your time. Those 3 did you have in custody are just talking to get publicity for the Otero murders. They know nothing at all. This was the first time the public heard directly from the killer, but more importantly, it was the first time they learned his name for himself. BTK, bind, torture, kill. The letter contained details only the killer could know. Crime scene specifics that hadn't been released to the public. It was proof that BTK was still out there, still watching, still planning. But the letter revealed something else about Dennis Rader, something that would eventually lead to his downfall 30 years later. BTK craved recognition. He didn't just want to kill, he wanted credit for his kills. This need for acknowledgement, this desperate hunger for attention, would become both his signature and his weakness. Because while Dennis Rader thought he was playing games with the police, he was actually leaving a trail. Every letter, every phone call, every attempt at communication was giving investigators another piece of the puzzle. They just didn't know it yet. The double life perfected. The family man. 1975. While police across Kansas searched for BTK, Dennis Rader was experiencing one of the most joyful moments of his life, the birth of his son, Brian. Picture this. The same hands that had strangled 4 members of the Otero family were now gently holding a newborn baby. The same mind that had planned methodical torture was now choosing baby names and buying cribs. How is this possible? Psychologists call it compartmentalization, the ability to separate different aspects of personality so completely that they operate independently. For most people, this might mean keeping work stress from affecting family time. For Dennis Rader, it meant keeping his identity as a serial killer completely separate from his role as a father and husband. Home videos from this period show a man who appears genuinely loving toward his children. He teaches them to ride bikes. He reads them bedtime stories. He takes them on camping trips and to baseball games. And here's what's most disturbing. By all accounts, Dennis Rader's love for his children was real. He wasn't acting when he played with them. He wasn't pretending when he worried about their scraped knees or helped with their math homework. This is what made Dennis Rader so dangerous. He wasn't a Hollywood movie villain, constantly brooding and obviously sinister. He was capable of genuine human connection and emotion, but only within the carefully constructed boundaries he'd created for himself. The church leader. 1979. Dennis Rader joins the Council of Christ Lutheran Church. Within 2 years, he's elected president. Every Sunday, Dennis Rader sits in the front pew, listening to sermons about morality, redemption, and the sanctity of human life. He sings hymns, he prays, he leads Bible study groups. And between these moments of worship, he plans his next murder. How does a man who has committed the most brutal acts imaginable find comfort in religious faith? How does he reconcile the teachings of Christianity with his own monstrous actions? The answer reveals something crucial about Dennis Rader's psychology. He didn't see himself as evil. In his mind, BTK and Dennis Rader were two completely different people. Dennis Rader, the church president, was a good man who helped his community and loved his family. BTK was something else entirely, a separate entity that Dennis couldn't control. This wasn't multiple personality disorder. This was something far more calculated. Dennis Rader had consciously created a psychological structure that allowed him to commit horrific acts while maintaining his self-image as a moral person. He had convinced hymns,